Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to this month's edition of the PastorCast. The PastorCast is brought to you each month by Service Realty. We spend a little bit of time each month bringing you speakers and resources that are relevant to the church community. We start every year just about in January with Jim Tomlin from Multi-Site Solutions. He shares with us about what's going on in the multi-site world. This spring, we've had Will Mancini from Oxano talking about his new book, God Dreams. We just talk about things that we believe are critical to the church and that you care about. And so we're really excited to be able to share that with you. You can view those past PastorCasts at thepastorcast.com. You can go in there and view those. But we're really excited today to share with you about a great ministry here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that is just expanding and growing. And it's called Lionheart Children's Academy. And Lionheart Children's Academy was started by Stan Dobbs. Many of you hear the name Stan Dobbs, and you immediately associate that with Apartment Life. And Stan was the founder of Apartment Life, a great intentional ministry to reach people with the gospel. So I could go on about his bio, but I'd like to welcome Stan. And Stan, just tell us a little bit about Apartment Life and how that has led into Lionheart Children's Academy.
Well, thank you for having me, John. Yeah, I felt the call to birth Apartment Life in 2000 and really given my whole life to that for the last 15 years. But as you know, I had a health crisis in 2011 and had to have a stem cell transplant. And that took me offline for about a year. I basically moved down to MD Anderson and spent a year going through that. And really during that downtime was praying, and God really called me back to my first true love in ministry, which was reaching kids, particularly lost kids in the community. And reread a book that George Barna had written some time ago called Raising Children to be Spiritual Champions. And in the book, Barna just laid out the case very provocatively that if we don't reach a person for Christ by their 13th birthday, statistically speaking, we never will. And I just really sat in that and was captivated by that reality and began praying, God, what's the next big idea for the body of Christ to really deepen gospel penetration in that age group, birth to 12, that is really the age that's going to drive the future of the gospel. And that really basically led me to a series of events that ultimately culminated in the birth of the vision of Lionheart. And I can't tell you how excited we are from the early results that we've seen.
So Lionheart is a full-time child care preschool academy, right? It's an academy. During the summer, you offer summer programs. Expand on a little bit of what Lionheart does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, Lionheart, what we really do, the God vision is to take back the child care industry for Christ. We have given, most people don't realize we've given that entire industry away to secular companies. We drive by them every day. It's Creme de la Creme, La Petite, Primrose, and we're giving these places our children for up to 50 hours a week during the most spiritually sensitive years of their life with no gospel. And it just so happens, John, that that's also the most sensitive time in an adult's life when we first start having children. Even if we haven't grown up with the Lord or we've drifted away, we start to reevaluate where we are spiritually when we're young parents. So it's actually the perfect stage of life to not only reach young parents, young families, but also the children. But anyway, we've given this child care industry away. As you know, more and more families are dual income. Mom works full-time, or it's a single-parent household. And what has happened is the evangelical church is basically offering, for the most part, part-time programs, Mother's Day out, 2-day a week, 3-day a week. The challenge with that is that culture has moved in a different direction. And if you don't provide full-time care, it's really a non-starter for working families. So what we do is we help churches launch and operate full-time child care academies that includes preschool, after school, and summer programs in their facilities in a spiritual partnership to reach unchurched families, get them in the church, and ultimately earn the right to share the gospel and then bridge them into the body of Christ, into the church.
I love that Lionheart is an intentional, I call it a ministry focus for the church. It's intentional. And it's not just to keep your kids during while the parents are at work. You're intentionally reaching lost children and their families via childcare. So you just laid it out. It's intentional. It's on purpose. It's planned. And everything you guys have built into your structure plays into that. I've seen that as I've partnered with you and been presenting Lionheart to churches. You guys have really had a hyper focus on doing that. And I think that's key in actually having successful childcare ministry, not just childcare, but it's really active ministry. And it sets you apart, I believe. There's people who say that that's what they're going to do, but really, as you have entered into some great partnerships with churches, I've seen that. And I think it goes back to that intentionality. Talk to me. You went a little bit about this. You've recorded a great video about the gospel shot clock. I'd like if you would review that for those who are listening today.
Sure. Well, I think the NBA finals were on when I was kind of going through this medical stuff. And so I was thinking about a shot clock. And so Barna basically says that we have a shot clock, a gospel shot clock, and it starts when you're born and the buzzer goes off on your 13th birthday. Statistically speaking, he has demonstrated beyond dispute that that's the window, and that once a kid hits 13, statistically, the chances are that they will never come to Christ. So if you look at that window and say, okay, that's the shot clock, well, what are the windows into the life of a lost child who's in a secular home, whose parents have sort of given up on the faith, have no interest in spiritual things or church or the gospel? What are the windows into that child's life from birth to 12? And I see there's primarily three. There's the preschool years from birth through kindergarten, where, again, more families are having their children in full-time preschool. In the public school, once they enter the public school system, there's an after-school window from 3 to 6 until mom gets off work. So after school is strategic. And then the summer, what those kids are doing with summer camps. Again, very few strong evangelical options for full-time summer programming. So in my view, the shot clock is really dominating those three windows to maximize, again, gospel penetration in this critical age group.
Well, it's a great analogy. You know, the Cleveland Cavaliers keep missing the shot clock every time lately. I don't know what they do. But I think when we really think about that shot clock and we say, okay, as the church, how are we going to engage those that aren't even here yet? You know, obviously we've got people in our churches. And Lionheart, you've shared with me, Lionheart is not for the kids that are already in your church. Lionheart, you're reaching to intentionally trying to focus on those who aren't here, those who are not in the church. A lot of Mother's Day Out programs, a lot of times, are kids who are already in the church. Moms need a break during the week. That's good service. But you're intentionally trying to reach those who aren't involved in the church. I've heard some great stories from you and even from some of the churches you've partnered with about some kids who were completely against the gospel, who were in their schools, who really had a heart change.
And that's a key distinctive, John. So the part of the attractiveness of it for the pastors that we're already working with is that our entire focus in terms of marketing, everything we do in the community, is attracting secular families that are currently using secular childcare. That is our target audience. Doesn't mean we don't serve Christians or serve members of the church. It's just not our focus. It's really an outreach strategy. And you mentioned the intentionality. Even in some of the best evangelical options I've seen for churches that are doing something like this or Great Mother's Day Out, it's pretty rare that I see intentionality to what they're trying to do spiritually in terms of what are the goals? What are the spiritual goals we're trying to accomplish? How are we grading our efforts every year? You know, how are we staffing to have that intentionality so it doesn't just become a grind of childcare? We have a dedicated staff member in our model who has no operational responsibility. Their sole job is almost like another staff member for the church. Their job is to invest in the lives of those families and get into their lives, really share the gospel with them and figure out what are the on-ramps into the church that's appropriate for those families. So I think intentionality is the key word.
Yeah, and I think that's your community director in position, and I was going to go there, and you went there right for me. That's great. And the thing, when I came and toured Lake Arlington Baptist Church, the lady who is the community director there was a former children's minister. And the cool thing is she's a member of the church, again, on purpose, so that when those kids who see her every day when they show up, they see her Monday through Friday, if they do come on Sunday, they have a familiar face, and she's actually there looking for them.
Yes.
And so that's something that's on purpose. It's intentional, that they have a familiar face Monday through Friday, that if they go to that church, if they do answer the call and come to the special event on a Sunday, or the women's retreat or the men's retreat that the parents can come to, they have somebody they can look for that they will recognize. I just think that's so valuable. The partnership between the church and the school, it's what makes this successul.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, the ministry partnership. This is not a rental or a lease. Actually, when I was first introduced to you guys, I was working with a church that was thinking about, should we sell our building? Should we have a tenant? And they were thinking about tenant options, but this is not a real estate transaction. This is not a lease. This is a 5-year ministry partnership to start. Talk about that ministry partnership between the church and Lionheart.
Well, I think the key thing, and you touched on it, it's not Lionheart using the church to fulfill Lionheart's vision. Mm-hmm. It's the church using Lionheart to fulfill her vision. So these families are in the mission field of the church. Lionheart is just a great tool for the church to use to fulfill their vision. So that's the key. So you're right. We're not looking for a tenant or rental relationship. We enter into a joint partnership agreement. It's a 5-year initial period where Lionheart provides all the capital to get it going. So it's a very kind of a no-brainer, frankly, financially for the church. Mm-hmm. But the key is it's a ministry partnership. It's a joint venture. It's not a landlord-tenant relationship.
Yeah, and I love that. I talk with churches in my real estate work that the building is not the church. The church is the people. The building is a tool. I love the same parallel that Lionheart is not just a rental or an income producer. Lionheart is a tool of ministry. Mm. And yes, there is a component where once you've recouped your investment, a church can receive some of the profit, 75% of the profits that come in. That is there. But again, Lionheart is a tool to reach more people with the gospel. I think that's critical.
When you think about, John, in your business, focusing on helping churches with real estate, think about the utilization of infrastructure of a church. You get high utilization on Sunday, you get some utilization on Wednesday, maybe on a little bit on Tuesday, Thursday, but by and large during the week, the utilization stewardship of the facilities that God has given us is so low that they're basically dormant, most of our facilities during the week. So the key question is, how can we leverage that dormant time to advance our vision, advance our mission? And to me, that's where Lionheart kind of fits.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what an ideal church partner looks like. Because obviously there's churches across America. There's some churches that are 100,000 square feet. There's some that are 2,000 square feet. And obviously for Lionheart to be the right tool, you got to be in the right building, the right tool, again, to house the kids and to be safe and to do all that. So as you look at a facility and a church that would fit, share with me a little bit about your ideal church partner.
Well, first and foremost, we have to have vision alignment. So we're an evangelical ministry. So we're looking for a church that has a heart for the community, has a passion for outreach and really reaching young families. Once we, get past that, you're right, the facilities are important. So we need to have a decent size. I think our first 2 churches were about 500 to 700 in attendance. Mm-hmm. You have to have probably 12 to 15 rooms that are kind of children friendly. Mm-hmm. To give you a feel for sort of the size of the structure, because we need about 200 children to sort of make the model work. So it has to be a mid-sized church at least. And then things that kind of become challenging is if it's not up to code for childcare, like for example, it doesn't have sprinkler systems. Mm-hmm. That can be challenging. So usually they're newer facilities where they've been built to fire codes that required sprinklers. But those are really the few that are, I would say, the critical ones.
Right. I think many churches say, well, we've already got our Mother's Day Out program, so we can easily have Lionheart. That's not always the case, because when you have a church-sponsored daycare or a Mother's Day Out program that's not fully licensed, you can get away without having fire sprinklers, for example.
That's right.
Lionheart is a fully licensed daycare academy that requires that we have to live up to certain standards, building codes and things. And you guys come into facilities and make substantial improvements in some areas if the rest of the facility works, putting in sinks and doing all those kind of things that make the rooms fully licensed. So you guys invest in that.
And they're, to be honest, they're, great improvements for the church. So we tend to significantly improve the playgrounds, the what's in the classrooms for Sunday is greatly improved. So the investment that we make in the church facility tends to be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing for people to realize. An ideal church profile is probably also someone, obviously, vision alignment, the right size facilities, someone who's not necessarily looking just for a financial option, but really wants to reach more people. It goes back to that vision alignment, but they see this as what you guys have designed, an entire ministry that's a partner and not just a landlord-tenant relationship. So. Yeah,
the financial model is really simple. We provide all the startup capital to get the facility ready, to build the academy up to where it breaks even within about a year. And that's usually about a $400,000 to $500,000 investment. And then we pay that back over the first 3 years. But the whole time we're paying for that community director that I mentioned, that full-time staff leader to achieve the spiritual goals. We're paying the church a monthly occupancy reimbursement for any incremental cost for maintenance or utilities. So it's really revenue neutral. We don't want the church to have any additional expense. But once that loan gets paid back, as you said, 75% of the net income flows to the church in perpetuity. So it's really we've tried to make it an easy decision financially. We want to bless the church in 3 ways: spiritually, financially, and operationally. And obviously operationally, because we do all the heavy lifting and kind of the operational aspects.
Right. So you've been going for a couple of years now. You've started here in the Dallas area, starting to look towards Houston and Austin and some opportunities there. Share with me a couple of stories. I know you've got a report from your original academy that started at Lake Arlington. You have a good report there. And share with me just a little bit of the report of what's happening.
Yeah, we've honestly, the spiritual impact has been even greater than we had hoped. So, for example, our target was to have 50% unchurched families at any time. We're at 70% in our first academy. So 70% of the families are unchurched families. And I got a report last week that we have seen 27 families integrate into the church through Lionheart just in the first couple of years. So the pastor really sees Lionheart as one of the most successful outreaches to young families that he's ever implemented. And again, it's just practical. We're getting these families on the campus of the church every day, getting them comfortable with the facilities, with the people. We're loving on them and their kids. So it's really a very natural onboard from that point to into the body of Christ.
Yeah. Well, I've heard story after story. I've heard stories of kids who came in and walked in and said, I can't talk about God, to at the end of a semester wanting to share Bible stories with the class and be a leader. And so your teachers, I know that you want your teachers to have that focus, that intentionality of sharing Christ with them. The community director position, I'm just going to go back to that one more time, is very intentional. You could operate cheaper by not paying that person, but then you wouldn't be living up to your mission and in what you've said. This is what we set out to do. So many churches, sometimes we lose focus on that. We drop things because of certain reasons, one reason or another. And I think there's a real guiding principle that we know why we do certain things, why we say yes to some things and no to others. And you guys know that, and you know that community director is critical to accomplishing what Lionheart wants to accomplish.
Absolutely.
So a church says, hey, we're interested in doing this in our church. Let's talk a little bit about how they contact us. I know they can go to your website. I'm going to share here real quick. You guys have done a great job of investing in a website that really answers a lot of questions for people, and it's very friendly. So it's lionheartkid.org. You've got some great resources here for churches. How's the best way they can contact me, but how else can they connect with your team to get started?
I think, initially just to have a brief conversation by phone and talk about vision alignment. I want to hear the heart of the pastor and where they're trying to take the church.
Mm-hmm.
We have some pretty sophisticated demographic software that we can use to assess the location and how viable it is in terms of the demographics. And even if we don't do anything, those are a powerful tool that we provide to pastors that really gives them insight into their community, perhaps in a more unique way. But I think it's just that simple. They can just reach out to you or I by email. I'm at standobbs@lionheartkid.org and would love to have that conversation.
Yes, and I'll share my email is johnm@servicerealty.com, which is right there behind my bed, behind my head, servicerealty.com, John M. And that's a lot of what I do. So the way I partner with Lionheart is I talk with churches about this opportunity, and then Stan is not telling you anything misleading. The software that they have, all I got to do is give them your address, and they can shoot you out some information that really tells you about your area. And having that opening conversation can lead to saying, is this the right thing for our church? And if not, you got some great information about your target area, the people that are in your area that maybe you don't have at your fingertips. And so Stan and his team will come meet with you. I will come check out your facility. And just kind of see what are those things that we would need to do? What would we need to invest in? Met with a church last week where they would need to add fire sprinklers, and that may be a challenge in their location. But in other locations, it's just simple, got to do this, and just a few tweaks here and there. But again, the biggest thing is, whoa, lost my earpiece there. Talking with my hands too much. Does this line up with what your church is trying to accomplish? If you're trying to reach people with the gospel, I think Lionheart is a great tool for your ministry. The reports we've had from those who've started here in the Dallas area have been great. And so I'm just really staying appreciative to be able to share this with folks. What else would you like to share maybe that we've skipped over? I think I've covered most of the points I wanted to chat about. But how else, what else do you have to say to pastors who may be watching this, who say, well, I don't think this is necessary for us, just by listening to the past 20, 30 minutes we've been talking?
Well, I'd say go back to the main thing at the beginning, and that is no one is saying that we're setting the world on fire in America with advancing the gospel, right? Most say we're treading water, maybe making mild progress at best. It's my conviction that if we're really going to turn the dial for Christianity and the future of the gospel in America, it's going to be with the youngest generation. That's just, the data is compelling. That's where spiritual worldviews are formed. That's where spiritual decisions are formed. And we're swimming uphill if we're trying to reach people beyond their 13th birthday. So in my mind, this is really a long-term strategic initiative for the future of the kingdom of God in America, to invest in the next generation, to deepen gospel penetration so that these kids can ultimately start new lines of spiritual heritage in their families. So that's the big idea.
Well, I'm just going to encourage churches that maybe have had a school in the past, have and run their own school now, have facilities that go unused, that maybe they've never had a school, but they've got a lot of good classrooms that sit unused. If that's you, if that describes you a little bit, please connect with us. Send me an email. Again, johnm@servicerealty.com. If you send me an email, if you reach out to me, I'll send you the gospel shot clock video that Stan has done. It's a great way to share with the rest of your leadership team about the heart and what Lionheart is. Maybe they don't have the 30 minutes to watch this PastorCast, but if you'll shoot me an email, I'll send you that gospel shot clock video, and you can share that with your leadership team. And most of the time when I've had someone share that with their leadership team, they've said, let's have another discussion. Let's meet in person. Let's talk about this because this lights our fire. So again, that's johnm@servicerealty.com. We'll share that gospel shot clock video. And Stan, I just appreciate your heart. Apartment Life has been a great ministry. I know many people who've gone through it, people who have been in my Sunday school class in the past, who've been very effective in sharing the gospel in their apartment communities. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to the education of young students. The church needs to step up. And in a dark world, in a world that is changing every day, all the other messages are coming through loud and clear. If you turn on the TV, your kids hear about what's happening in our world. And I think we cannot let this get out of our grasp. And what you've started with Lionheart, I think we're just in the beginning stages even now to see what's going to happen, to allow churches to partner with Lionheart and to have a real kingdom focus and just a kingdom harvest reaching these children. So I appreciate what you guys have done. Anything else you want to say, or is that it?
That's it. Thank you, John.
Right. Well, thanks, Stan, for joining us. Again, folks, the PastorCast is brought to you by Service Realty. We look forward to seeing you again in July. If you want, you can share this link with other pastors and tell them about it. And we look forward to hearing from you and introducing Lionheart to you. And we'll talk to you next month. Bye-bye.